what's going on, everyone? It's LJ.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's LJ.
What's going on, everyone? It's LJ, and it's time
For a rock and metal update!
What's going on, everyone? It's LJ, and yes, it is time for another rock and metal update. By far and away my favorite type of update to film and interact with y'all on. Let's get started. First up, a trio of singles. Something I don't normally grab, but if the price is right and they're cool, why not? The first two are from Quiet Riot. The first one is Bang Your Head, and this is the album version from Metal Health, backed with a live version as well. This is on the Pasha label, and I've had the single for years, but it was in a standard white paper sleeve and never had the picture sleeve. So when that showed up, there was no question, and all of these were $1 a piece. Next is another Quiet Riot single with Mama We're All Crazy Now, backed with Bad Boy. So this was a follow-up single from the follow-up album, Condition Critical, which came after Metal Health. And Mama We're All Crazy Now was an obvious cash-in attempt to try to repeat the success they had with their earlier cover, Come On Feel the Noise. Not at all a bad single, and I love Condition Critical. Pretty much just a carbon copy of Metal Health, but in my honest opinion, I kind of like Condition Critical a little bit better. The track Red Alert from that album, my all-time favorite Quiet Riot song. And the other one that showed up was Crocus, and this is Midnight Maniac, backed with Ready to Rock, and this is from their album, The Blitz. A lot of people will tell you The Blitz isn't really that great of an album. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all, personally. I think as far as Crocus's stab at hair metal, it's a fine album. I absolutely like it. And Midnight Maniac is a killer track. It's got a great groove and a great vibe to it. All three were pretty cool additions. Next up is an album that I've wanted on vinyl forever. It was released in the early 90s, 1993 to be exact, and it was The Return. Are you ready? Did I hear correctly? Did I read correctly? Mercyful Fate is back? Yeah! And this is Fate in the Shadows. Mercyful Fate was already legendary by this point, with their Nuns Have No Fun EP, then Melissa, and then Don't Break the Oath, and then that was it. And that was too bad. I really wasn't into them at the time those came out in 83, 84, but I definitely got into them towards the late 80s and early 90s, and it was too bad they were all done. I was into King Diamond, who was going strong, but King Diamond and Mercyful Fate were a little different. So when it was said that Mercyful Fate was coming back, the original lineup minus a new drummer, Morten Nielsen, on drums in this case, even though Snowy Shaw is credited. I believe Snowy toured with them, but Morten actually played on the kit here. Then the video for lead-off track Egypt hit, and that was it. Killer! Had the cassette, had the CD, and never owned it on vinyl. This is the Back on Black reissue. It came on clear vinyl. Not a big deal. Sounds absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. You have the bonus track, Return of the Vampire, 1993, which has Lars Ulrich on the drum kit. To be completely honest with you, it's nothing special. The entire album as a whole is killer. And Is That You, Melissa, with its harpsichord intro, has long been one of my absolute favorite Mercyful Fate tracks. I could not have been more thrilled to have gotten the opportunity to add this to the collection on vinyl. It sounds outstanding. Next up is the 1988 reissue of Banshee's 1986 5-song EP, Cry in the Night. And it's actually right here, but you have to read it like this. Cry in the night. You think I'm kidding? Look at it. That's how you have to read it. You have to bob your head. Cry in the night. What a killer, killer EP. This was an absolutely phenomenal addition on vinyl. It's on Metal Blade Records. And Banshee, this EP is very similar to like Rage for Order era Queensryche. Just tons of vocal melodies, varying tempos throughout the songs, just enough to keep things different. Excellent, traditional, standard Metal Blade release. US power metal from the mid-80s. Next up is a release I could not wait for. When? Come on, counting the days until it came out. And that is the 4th and newest album from Sweden's Enforcer. New wave of traditional heavy metal elite. One of the absolute top and most well-known acts in the new wave of traditional heavy metal. Here's the inner sleeve. And the worst thing about this album was waiting for it to come out. When was it gonna drop? Lead singer Olaf has been just about everywhere. He's a new wave of traditional heavy metal matriarch. And he has shown up everywhere, from backing vocals on Cauldron's Burning Fortune, backing vocals on Iron Curtain's Jaguar Spirit. The guy just has a dedication and a passion to the genre that's unmatched. But how is the album? Neck-breaking dual guitar attack, insane rhythm section, the bass and the drums, it's all right there in the mix. Olaf's vocals are off the charts. It is simply amazing. Every track better than the one before. Impossible to relegate this to background noise. It is just an insanely good album. The only wrong thing you could do is not check out Enforcer. Huge, heavy rotation, spinning constantly since it got here. An absolutely killer Enforcer album. And now it's just countdown to the next. Next up, a high roller release from 2012 from the Greek band Metamorphosis. All of the material on this album, which is their first full-length, was written between 1996 and 2011. Now, Metamorphosis has a really kind of cool, maybe Manila Road, Jag Panzer, Crimson Glory kind of vibe to it. An absolutely killer release. And when you have material that was written over a period of 15 years, you're going to have a lot of variance in kind of the quality and the difference in the material. And that's definitely there. This was on white vinyl. But if you dig any of those bands that I just mentioned, it is 100% worth checking out. Next up is a killer and what was to me a surprise release from the Runaways. And this is the Runaways live from the Agora Ballroom in Cleveland, Ohio in July 1976. I actually didn't even realize this album was coming out, and it's super limited. It was printed by a label called Vinyl Lovers, which as far as I understand is a Czech Republic-based label. So what's the sound quality gonna be like? How will it play out? It was outstanding. Sounds killer. A true soundboard recording from a live show recorded just 1 month after their debut record was released. And 70% of that record is on this. And about 6 months before the follow-up, Queens of Noise. And there's some tracks from that here as well. And I have to thank fellow YouTuber Bruno Enderlee for even letting me know he had picked up a copy and then sending me on the hunt for one. Phenomenal live release from the Runaways. Shifting gears and coming forward a little bit, here's a 1984 release from Lords of the New Church, The Method to Our Madness. An absolutely fantastic record. So you have punk heroes from the Damned and the Dead Boys reinventing themselves as a cult-like 80s rock band, but still retaining that punk snarl in a lot of the songs, and incorporating even some goth and new romantic elements that were pretty prevalent or kind of petering out at the time. But it's all here, and it was an absolutely phenomenal record. And sadly, lead singer Stiv passed away about 25 years ago. But I do understand they've reformed and they're out there doing their thing again, so best of luck to them. Killer album. Next up, an album I didn't ever think I'd add to this band's discography, and that is the 2005 release from Saxon, Lionheart. This is one of those albums that for some reason just became scarce, and you never really know why. It's not exactly said, hey, there'll only be 500 or 1,000. It kind of just happens sometimes. I didn't pick it up. Damn it, now it's gone. And this was one of them. And this is an album I was missing from the Saxon collection. Again, from 2005, this is just Biff and Saxon being Biff and Saxon, doing what they do. They couldn't be further away from the new wave of British heavy metal days of yore. Saxon really just evolved into an outstanding power metal band, heavy metal band, and that's exactly what this is. There's enough variance here to keep it from being the epic swords and sorcery up the mountain to slay the dragon album. It's not that. It's an absolutely phenomenal release from Saxon. Again, it kind of took my breath away to even have the opportunity to grab this and add it to the collection. Another killer release from Saxon, who for me, can do no wrong. Here's a release from 2011 that, again, flew under the radar, and I was amped to have an opportunity to add to the collection, and it is Steeds of Time from Vigilance. And this is a 6-song, call it an EP, it's 6 songs release. Absolutely phenomenal. Vigilance, this reminds me a whole lot of early Iron Maiden, the first Maiden album, and Killers. It's just got that kind of raw sound and production to it, and that throwback to the new wave of British heavy metal days from a new wave of traditional heavy metal band. There's a demo on here called Behind the Cellar Door, and it's a lot more like early Mercyful Fate. So it doesn't really fit with the whole record. It's the last track on side 2, so it's no interruption. And it's still a great track, and not at all a bad way to close out the album. It's absolutely fantastic. This came on, or at least my copy is on standard black vinyl, and it was just absolutely jacked with extras. From a printed inner, to a sticker, to a full-size poster. And from what I've heard, the band actually just put out a brand new release. Sadly, for me anyways, it's very, very much more aligned with like a death metal sound, so it's one I'll be completely avoiding, but this one was absolutely fantastic, and fingers tightly crossed, they go back to that sound for the next release. So boys, if you're listening, turn the bus around, please. Next up is a very common album. It's a 1973 essential album from Alice Cooper, and this is $1 Billion Babies. LJ, why are you showing $1 Billion Babies from Alice Cooper? Because what 80s metalhead or 70s hard rocker metalhead didn't cut their teeth on Elected? $1 Billion Babies. No more Mr. Nice Guy. And I'm no different. My Alice Cooper in the 80s was a little different than it was in the 70s, but this is the 4th Alice Cooper album with Bob Ezrin at the helm, and an absolutely amazing one. So why'd I pick it up? I already own it. I have a 70s issue complete with dollar bill and punch-out cards. But the vinyl, it's got some issues. It's got some hairlines, a little bit of background noise I can't quite get rid of with cleaning it. This is an 80s reissue, and it showed up dead mint. Never played. The only difference is, of course, being you've got yourself a barcode on the back. The cards here are no longer perforated, so you can't punch them out, and the bill is no longer removable. So again, my original pressing has all of those, but for an 80s reissue, dead mint, in the bins, absolutely. There is nothing better than spinning this album. I have started many mornings with $1 Billion Babies. A nod to their own success in title and a phenomenal release. Is it hot in here? Now from 2015, here's a second full-length release from Swedish new wave of traditional heavy metal band Trial. What an amazing record. As soon as this came in, I set the needle straight down on it, bumped it right up the queue. Could not wait for this after listening to a couple of tracks here on YouTube. And the more I listened to it, the more I thought to myself, wow, what a great early Iron Maiden kind of Bruce Dickinson era vibe from like a Peace of Mind, not so much Power Slave, it's a little more progressive there, but that right in that Peace of Mind point. And it's kind of a throwback to like even early Mercyful Fate, but more King Diamond. So then I kind of grabbed the booklet that it comes with, and it comes with this huge full-color booklet, just an amazing top-shelf release. And then, the more I dug, the more I saw, produced by Andy LaRocque, King Diamond's guitar player. So there you go, there you have it. So the band obviously paying homage to early Maiden, to King Diamond, to their influences, worn proudly on their sleeve. And they went and put together an amazing record. Lots of calculated but varying tempos, changing it up, lead to one hell of a listen. And definitely an album worth checking out. Another top shelf release from High Roller Records. Next on deck was a killer trade with Brother Greeno, another YouTuber and member of the vinyl community. Greeno and I worked out a trade that ended up with him getting a couple albums he was after, and me the same. And the first of those was a German reissue of Sepultura's Beneath the Remains. So for as much as I'm no fan of death metal, Sepultura was one of the key bands that I did try to get into it to in the late 80s and early 90s, and so I still have a tremendous soft spot for them. And the reason I do is because it's a band like Sepultura right around this time that just had total cohesion with the band. They knew what they wanted. And it's all of the varying tempos, the dash of melody, and that kind of cohesion that keeps this from being mindless, repetitive, redundant death metal, which I can't stand. This has long been a favorite. I would say I first encountered this album around 1991, and I've loved it ever since. absolutely amazing. And to have the opportunity to add this to the collection on vinyl and a beautiful near mint German reissue with that was phenomenal. And next is the first album from new wave of traditional heavy metal band from, I believe, Portland, Oregon, Spellcaster. And while I had their second one on vinyl, this one had been a little tricky to track down. Thankfully, Greeno caught a copy while he was out digging at the shops, knew I was after it, and we were able to work out a trade. And next up from 1985, the only album I was missing from the classic period of Lizzie Borden. And this is Love You to Pieces, an absolutely amazing album. We all know Lizzie Borden from this time. Lizzie Borden just executed that horror theme with a perfection that a band, as much as I love them, like Halloween, they lacked that technical ability. Lizzie had it all over them, and Lizzie is one of the most underrated U.S. classic heavy metal bands around. An absolutely insanely amazing album. This album would pretty much in its entirety, along with the EP that preceded this, make it to the Murderous Metal Roadshow, the double live set that followed this. It was outstanding to finally track down a near mint copy of their full-length debut, and it's being spun without mercy. Next up, another album that flew completely under the radar when it was released, and it's the 2012 release on Earache from New York, Nature. And just check out that gatefold. Die cut, pop up. I hope you can see that because it's been a long time since I've seen anything quite that cool. Huge Tigers of Pantang era, new wave of British heavy metal influences. This was released on green vinyl, and it just stomps from start to finish. And find yourself a copy, set your calendars to 1981, and enjoy. Now, much like $1 Billion Babies and rounding things out, here's another two absolutely essential albums that belong in every hard rock and heavy metal fans collection. And that is the first two albums from Aerosmith. Much like $1 Billion Babies, albums I already own, but not albums that show up every day in the shrink wrap in dead mint condition. Clearly, the first one being a reissue with a barcode on the back, and the second one probably from sometime in the mid to late 70s, maybe even early 80s as well. No barcode on the back, price to sell, in the shrink, dead mint, no brainer. And that's it for this Rockin' Metal update. I hope y'all dug it. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have one, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later!